I know a lot of small business owners out there struggle with how do I promote my business? How do I get my brand out there? How do I use social media? How do I market effectively? Well, today we're going to answer that question. Welcome to episode 47 of the Key Hire Small Business Podcast, where we cover the issues that help owners scale their small business. I'm Corey Harlock, creator of Key Hire Solutions, and I will be your host. Today, we have a wicked marketer and someone I'm happy to call a friend, Heather Maines. She is the president and strategic director at Savage, an agency that mobilizes minds, drives performance, creates results, and they're really, really good at marketing. A couple of things to know about Heather. She has a passion for helping businesses grow and a deep understanding of how to reach and engage customers. I've seen it happen. She's worked in manufacturing, tech, healthcare, professional service industries, and she loves hiking and the outdoors. And she has been up Mount Kilimanjaro, which I don't know a lot of people can say that. But Matt, let's bring on Heather.
Hi.
Hi. How long did that hike take?
6 days.
It's Africa, right? Kilimanjaro?
Yeah, Tanzania, Africa.
Cool. Did you have, what do they don't call them Sherpas there, I'm sure. What do they call them there?
They call them, oh gosh, you're dating me because it was the late 90s. Let me come back. Guide, but there's another, it's a Swahili word. I'll have to come back and tell you. Sherpa, guide, same thing.
Same thing. Was it the coolest thing you ever did?
Probably. It's up there for sure. It was definitely life altering because we almost died at the top of the mountain. So that's another story for
another time. You can't leave us hanging. You can't do that. Heather, that's marketing 101. You got to answer the question.
Oh,
give us the abbreviated version. Store rolled in.
Look, it was the mid-90s. It was the mid-90s before internet, you could really reach people. And we booked this trip randomly with me and two girlfriends with a family that lived in Tanzania. So basically we did not have the right gear and we were going on a wing and a prayer, and they took us up to 16,000 feet before you summit at 19 with no gear in the middle of like the frozen tundra. And we all started slipping and falling, and we're holding on to a wooden walking stick that we purchased for $1 at the base of the mountain. We made it. We're here to tell the story, but it was very harrowing, and I'm glad I'm on the other side of it.
Well, if you had been prepared, you wouldn't have the cool story.
Exactly. Yeah. It was really fun.
Awesome. Okay, so we're here to talk about marketing, and I know for small business owners in particular, marketing can be like a dirty word. I think it's up. There's a couple things that when they hear them, they're like, I don't know. How do I do it? We've talked on this show about how to do social media. We've talked about a bunch of stuff, but today I think you're going to tie it all together and help us understand what it should and can look like. But the biggest, I already hear business owners saying right now, I don't have time for that. I don't have the money to do it. It's too expensive, right? So let's talk around when you talk about marketing, and I've seen you in action, and I know how good the product is that you produce and the results primarily, how good they are.
Thank you.
So we always like to start with some definitions, and you mentioned before we came on that you have a list of definitions you want to roll through. So let's start there.
Yes. Well, I think speaking of mountains, people look at marketing as a mountain, how do I get there? What do I do? And especially in the small to medium sized business area, I always get asked, where do I start? How much do I budget? What is this? What does that mean? So to your point, I really hoped to be able to share for 2025. I mean, there will be some terms you hear social media, you hear AI, you hear all of these things. Yeah. What does that mean? And what does that mean this year? And what should I do this year? What's practical? How can I get started? And how do I make, a real difference? And both how I budget and then how I measure and what to do. So, I mean, some of the key things that I'd like to run through is, what's happening in the digital transformation landscape. We've been hearing this since COVID, but where are we with that? And what should we focus on?
Let's define digital transformation.
anything digital, anything that we would use from so instead of using traditional marketing, uh, trade
Collateral.
show,
Yeah.
collateral, print ad, the digital side is like we're doing right now: podcast,
Okay.
YouTube, video, social, Google ads, PPC, pay per click, those types of things, email, like all of the digital platforms, basically.
Got it.
Yeah. So digital transformation, brand differentiation. So I'm going to go through each of these and kind of what
Sure.
some key level focuses. And I thought it might be helpful. I always get this question and I love being practical and speaking in layman's terms. So we can talk about this, but I'd like to use like, what does that mean if I'm talking about, digital transformation? What are some examples within an
Sure.
industry that we can, talk about specifically? So I thought that might be kind of helpful as we go through each one of these different components of what should make up your strategy this year.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Well, I was thinking, let's start with budgeting, because budgeting is the number one question I get from business owners. How much do I budget? Or they'll say, I know I need marketing. I don't know what to do. Well, always, really look at, and this is where we always start. We're not out here just saying, oh, go spend a bunch of money on Google, go do this and that. We always say, what are your goals? So look at your business goals, high level, across the board. And today in 2025, they're really saying, like the CMA survey, Small Business Association, they're saying spend between 7 and 8% of your gross revenue in marketing. And that's all in. If you're paying for trade shows, if you have a staff, or if you're, hiring a firm to do this, all of your media spend 7 to 8%. There are factors that go into that. And some of the factors that people should really consider are, where are you in your company growth stage? Are you just starting out? Are you in a really competitive environment? You might need to turn it up a notch. There's industry specific factors. I can use manufacturing here. We have a client that they have gotten tons of government funding for their type of product. So they're trying to saturate the market right now because they know the funding is there. So it's like looking at the industry specific nuances as to how you would budget. This is a year that we need to do more.
I think what I'm hearing is there's not a blanket approach. Every approach should be unique to the business, the environment of that business, and the budget.
Yes.
Okay. Got it.
And within that, there's things you want to focus on, AI and digital marketing. And I'll start getting into that a little bit deeper on like where you budget. The other thing is, I'll say, I wrote a blog on this recently, and so it's on our website, and we'll give you that at the end as far as what considerations for budgeting, so people can look at it later.
Cool.
So let's talk about digital transformation. So that was the buzzword after COVID. Everybody had to take everything online. What do we do? How can we make an impact? It was webinars. It was all the things. Well, right now we all know it's AI, leveraging AI and automation, and you hear digital, data analytics. And what that is, obviously I think everybody knows now ChatGPT, and they're hearing Gemini. Some of the other tools are Perplexity and Claude. What we're seeing from an AI perspective is not only investing in some of the AI tools. There are tools out there that can help you optimize like your ad spend and various things, even operationally. What we're seeing from a search perspective is people aren't just searching on Google. They're pulling up Google, and then they're pulling up Gemini and GPT and Perplexity, and whatever they're searching for on Google, they're searching on all those platforms. So people need to spend the time and a little bit of money educating, or what we're calling training, all the platforms. It's called multimodal search. And that is critical because people aren't just Googling things anymore. And you want to be found on all of these different platforms. You want to be the thought leader and the subject matter expert. So we have clients where we're investing time and energy into training these other platforms for multimodal search. So that's a really important one in the digital transformation landscape.
Okay.
Another thing is really important, that even on a small scale for small businesses, really invest in a CRM and marketing automation. I know a lot of small companies just keep an email list on Excel. But there are very affordable platforms like Constant Contact and MailChimp. There are more expensive ones like HubSpot, Marketo that are bigger, but those platforms really allow you to get your list. It's called first party data, your list that you want. And that's how you know you can communicate with people because they've opted into your email. You keep track of that so that you can continue to nurture and communicate with your customers and your prospects. So I highly recommend people spending the time and a little bit of money, if you don't have a huge budget in this area, on setting up a CRM system and a marketing automation system. It's really important.
Well, and you can also, with that CRM, keep notes on people and you see the whole history of the conversation. So you can personalize things based on if you talk to them before and they say, oh, it's my daughter's birthday next week, you can whoop, and then a year later you'd say, hey, I hope, how was your daughter's birthday? And it's that personal touch.
That you just said one of the other buzzwords for the year, personalization. And personalization is the word everybody's going to hear. Last year it was manifest. This year it's personalization. But within that personalization, it's the whole chain of sales, marketing and sales working together. So to your point, all the notes within sales of keeping it personal, but on the marketing front, it's how do we personalize what content we're serving, each of the different personas or targets that we're trying to reach. And that is really critical. And again, I'll use a manufacturing example. We have a client that targets utilities, and then they target construction and the construction of bridges and things of that nature. Well, people building out utilities don't necessarily want to hear the same information that people are building out bridges per se, or an aquarium. So how do we send them the right content, like case studies and various pieces of innovations that they're doing within those realms? That's called personalization, really getting into how you're serving that. That's huge word for this year. So you don't want to use generic email templates. You want to kind of customize that too. Don't just have a blanket. Make sure that you're thinking about your audience and segmenting. We call it segmenting your list. So having different lists, because you might have, Corey, I know you with your business, you have different sectors that you target, and they probably some have unique needs, whether it's, professional services have different needs than manufacturers. So it's like understanding how to talk to each of those segments with information that they really care about, that shows that you know their business and you understand.
I think maybe on the other side of that is if you don't do that, then you kind of feel a little spammy and people say, well, this isn't valuable anymore. And they vote to not hear from you anymore, right? They can unsubscribe or get off your list. And now you've taken a lead that instead of getting them interested and starting to engage with them, you've kind of turned them off and they're like, well, they don't do what I need.
100%. That's exactly the reason why personalization, segmentation, all these buzzwords are super important. And they really do. They take time. That they would take time for your team or the person, putting this together for you to sort of go deep there, but it makes all the difference. All the difference in the world. So yeah. So the next kind of important component to your 2025 plan is brand differentiation. And so how do you, kind of what we're talking about, how do you stand out in a crowded market? Well, I can use, manufacturing example again. For a manufacturer, they want to position themselves as innovative, and they want to tell stories about what they're doing to stay on top of, their innovations and their processes. How efficient are they? Do they offer custom capabilities? These are all things within the manufacturing world. Another one that's big in manufacturing right now is sustainability. And I know we've had an administration change and things may, evolve, but sustainability is still a big feature of why people would choose to work with a certain manufacturer. So
I think the majority of people just care about not wasting or polluting or doing whatever.
They
like to know you're trying to do what you can to make the world less polluted.
But
I don't think you're making it better. You're just making it less worse.
Exactly. Well, there you go. Less worse. But all of those components are kind of what helps set their brand apart if they're able to tell those stories. So through video and case studies, And so all of these things sort of layer together. You're kind of hearing me talk about case studies and how you tell the story through, email and different, but they layer, but they're all specific in their own right to do them the right way and tell your story. That kind of leads to, so that's kind of branding and AI demand. So lead generation or demand generation. So, when you're budgeting, often you want to look at, am I driving brand awareness and lead generation? You want to do both because you want to tell those stories, like I was saying, about who you are and your innovations and all of that. Then you want to go straight into the core of best practices for, okay, how do I reach those targets very specifically? Well, some of the ways that you want to do that with demand generation are webinars and ebooks, and very specifically for certain industries, account-based marketing. That's a whole segment within itself of marketing that you target a large organization that you want to penetrate, and you work within the realms of targeting decision makers at those companies. That's called account-based marketing. So that's a big one under lead gen or demand gen. Again, I'm going to use a manufacturing example. Something that's worked really well is partnering with industry publications and finding those niche buyers and finding opportunity within those publications that you can build lead generation campaigns. And we've done that to build first party data lists. So for instance, we used a case study that we knew was popular for data center build outs. It was promoted through this publication's AI tool, went to a landing page where we captured the person that wants the case study, captured all their information, and then that became a lead to us. And we also were able to then build their email list, that, the first party data, that's email. So those types of opportunities are really good to look at for lead generation opportunities.
Okay. All right, cool.
Yeah. Am I going too fast?
No, it's like drinking from a fire hose here. So is that all your definitions?
I have a couple more, but I can stop there.
Well, let's kind of, because that's a lot. And I know most people are always like, okay.
Yeah, like, oh,
maybe they want to know what they're doing wrong, or they don't, but it's valuable to kind of talk about the mistakes we've seen people do when they try to market.
Sure.
Because a lot of people, I think, will go, oh yeah, I'm doing that, or I did that, or oh, I was going to do that. And if we can save them some steps and get them on the right track, that's always the goal of every show we do, is to kind of say, stop doing that and maybe think of doing it this way, because their resources and their time is limited. These are hardworking folks. They want to go home and have dinner with the family and trust that their business isn't blowing up while they're not there. So when you've seen people market, and we're talking about the $5 to $25 million a year business owner.
Yep.
What have you seen are the most common mistakes that you've seen a business owner make when they say, okay, we're starting a marketing campaign, I'm going to invest, or maybe that's one of the mistakes, I'm not going to invest. What are the most common ones you see?
Well, I mean, that's a really good point. Number one, not having a strategy with how they're going to invest, what they're going to budget, that is tied to, their business goals. So really understanding that and having the right expectation of how much should you invest in order to get the result you want to get. So that's one. Another one that's really common, that is really a hard hurdle, but I can't enforce it enough, and I talked about it earlier, is setting up the core of your CRM system and your marketing automation system so you can track things. People spend money and they never know where it went because they didn't set up the foundation in the beginning and have sales bought in. Like, we're going to spend money to do this. Close the loop on the back end. If we send you a lead, I want to make sure that you're calling the lead and following through. That I see it all the time. Sales is busy and they have their own agenda. If they're not tied together, sales and marketing, hey, we're spending money to do these things, here's the follow-up. I mean, you've kind of wasted your time and money at that point.
Well, and I think you outlined something there. Before this online marketing, people used to market via TV or print ads, and you could never really tell how effective they were because you can't track it. And the same mistake you could make is by not setting up this CRM in the background, if you're not tracking the data, and that's one of the most amazing things about online marketing, is you can tell almost every step, who clicked, where they were, when they clicked, what time they clicked. I mean, you can get so granular in the data. You don't have to, but you can. But what my understanding of what drives a lot of digital marketing is the ability to collect that data and refine and change to really go after that segment that is hungry for the information you're putting out there.
Exactly. No, exactly. And if you don't, I mean, that truly is the biggest, waste of money or mistake if you don't try to track and set your goals in the beginning. You're benchmarking in the beginning. You're saying, okay, I'm going to spend X. I'm going to watch how many people open my email. What are they reading? How many forms? I saw this recently. Somebody spent a whole lot of money to get eyeballs on a YouTube video, or it was actually a TEDx video. They had it on their YouTube channel, but they spent a lot of money and they were like, oh my gosh, we had all these web visitors, but they had no forms collected, meaning people saying, I want more,
Right.
They were super excited. They got over 100,000 people to their website, but nobody converted because they were just paying for traffic and they weren't paying for the right traffic. So, and they had no way of knowing because they didn't collect the data and the forms that they needed to get.
Yeah. And nothing will tell you like no one wants your information. And I'm guilty of it, is paying for people to come to your website.
Yeah.
This is a while ago. We were getting a monstrous amount of traffic and 0 leads because we just either what we had on there wasn't interesting, or we didn't have it set up right. But whatever it was, yeah, you get excited. Look how many hits we had this week.
But what happened?
Yeah, it just cost me a lot of money to get really excited about all our visitors, and then that's it. End of story.
Well, and the good news is some of those eyeballs that you got, they're building your brand and they're building the awareness. So and that's why I said it earlier on. It's usually about 50-50. Some of the money you spend is just building brand awareness. Sure. And then the other 50% you hope, and that number can vary. It's not always 50-50, but will be the lead gen, the getting the form, the call to, it's really about the call to action. People not thinking about what are you asking people to do? So they've read something or they've seen something, ask them, invite them, to contact you or learn more, or, whatever the call to action is.
So I think you just outlined another mistake is, if you're so the first one was get set up to collect the data and use a CRM effectively.
Yeah.
And the next one is, if you're going to drive people to your website, have something interesting for them. So at least they'll pay for it with their email. Right. If you think of it in currency like that, right? The cost of this material is your name and your email, which is the cost of a name and an email has gone way up, huh? Huge. People are way more selective about where they're going to drop their information than, you used to drop it everywhere. Oh, sure, whatever. And now we get so much information. People are very selective about that.
100%. And I love that. I hadn't thought about the cost of the information is your email. I love that. That's what the first party data is. If people see those terms, that's what that means. Yeah.
First party. So I go to your site and I willingly give you my name and email. So now basically I'm giving you permission to communicate with me.
Exactly.
That's what we're doing.
That's considered a huge win in engagement. That means your messaging and your branding and everything was on point. So
I'm going to put you on the spot, but
okay.
So if 100 people came to your website for the first time and saw that, pay for this information with your email, even if you had a really good page, how many of those 100 people would convert and drop an email in there on average?
It 100% depends on what the content is. And
right.
I'd have to look at benchmarks to tell you what that number is. So,
but
I would say
right?
even a 10% conversion rate is considered good. Like that's considered.
That's what You're not going to get everyone, but if they come back a second time, the percentage of the people that see it the second time, it goes up, right? And so the point I think the point I'm trying to make is you've got to build that. The first time people come and check you out, it's just like when you're shopping, right? You find a new website and you're like, hey, that's really cool. Yeah. And then a couple of days later, it pops up in your feed and you're like, oh yeah, I remember them. You go back. maybe you drop it in the cart, but I'm not ready to buy today.
Yep.
The third time I might go, yeah, let's just do this. I'm tired of looking at this. I really want it, whatever it is, right? There's that, walk them down a road a bit.
That's the marketer's dream. It's called nurturing. And
Ooh, another key word.
We love nurturing. We love to nurture, like it's little breadcrumbs. You start out exposing them, and then you nurture by giving little breadcrumbs of, thought leadership and content that they find interesting and they want to learn more about. Yeah.
And there, another mistake would be kind of, if you're trying to nurture them, like you said, one person who builds bridges, one person who builds, what was the bridges?
Utilities. Yeah.
Utilities. If someone who builds bridges puts up their hand and says, I might be interested, and I send them information on utilities, they're gone.
Exactly. Because they're like, I don't care about this. All I care about is getting my,
right.
my
bridges,
yeah. Exactly. My bridge.
Is there any other mistakes that come to mind, Heather, that kind of the big ones that you would say to people, just watch out for this?
I think on social, that's an easy one to that people would resonate with, is not being mindful of what message you're putting out on social media. So don't just, it's a free channel. It's organic, as they would say. But be thinking about what's the message you're trying to articulate, either about the values of your company, your offering, what is it you're saying, and make sure that you're really thoughtful of, what those posts include, so that you can engage people. Because again, you're nurturing them to get them to do something else. There's not always a call to action. Sometimes it's just awareness, but people not thinking through their social media strategy deep enough.
And with that kind of, I always try to look at the other side. That's just like posting shit to post shit. That has no continuity, and you're just like bombarding the channel, and it's like, okay, yeah, okay, and that's when people, have you ever done this? When I've gone, I'd like to see less of this person's content.
Oh yeah, click. Tune out. They're done.
Yeah, it ruins my day. You're like scrolling, and you're like, oh, not again. Yeah,
this is not relevant. Don't nurture me anymore.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so let's now move into some advice. I always like to ask, other than calling you, and we'll give people a chance to do that at the end. But if you're going to give someone your top 3 to 5 pieces of advice to kind of, let's assume it's 2025. I've never really invested in marketing other than just some internal stuff. We don't have anyone who's doing it. We're trying to do our own thing. Mm-hmm. We know it's just there. We're putting effort into it a little bit, and we're getting the exact results we should, which is not a lot. We consider it a burden, right? What advice would you give them for 2025 so they can, upgrade their marketing and start seeing some results from it?
I mean, the number one thing is figuring out your budget and committing to that again, against the goals of what you're trying to achieve. I mean, and I go to that because no one starts with that, but that's the most important piece that then opens up the opportunity to invest in these other areas. So think about that. Think about how, and use the rule of thumb of, the CMO and all these different Deloitte and everything that's in my blog that talks about how you should budget. Look at that and think about that. And that's a strategy. So use that so that you can then feel good. You can say, okay, this is what we've allocated. Let's start with, do we have a good email list? This is the number one, tool, is look at your list. Do you have it? Do you have people that have opted in? Have you ever asked this? And this is a mistake and an opportunity. People, through either sales or different avenues, create their own list without asking people, have they opted in and do they want to receive an email? So you can send out a survey to that list to say, hey, it's the new year. We want to engage, we want to send you relevant, not relevant, but helpful information from XYZ company, about this topic. Tell us what you're interested in. And by the way, there's a checklist, opt in or opt out. You have to do that because if you don't, you can spam people and you'll get blacklisted on the email Can Spam Act. So that is the easiest thing people can do, is make sure that they have a good list. And if they don't, come up with a strategy to build a good list.
I was going to say, what if I don't have a list?
What events are you attending? Think about how you do reach out to people. Think about how you bill. You've got email list in your billing. Go back and ask you all the people that you bill their customers, build your list off of that. I know some of them may be finance people, but you can, whoever you sold to, you should have an email
Sure.
list,
Yeah.
as well, or an email for them. But I
Yeah.
mean, that's a good way to look at
It's interesting. Yeah.
your customer. So build that. I mean, that is the number one thing, is getting that email list. And how do you, because that's how you own talking to people, and you have a channel to talk to people.
Sure.
And then from there, I would just think about what do you already have in play? Do you have social media channels in play? What could you build a little content calendar of things that you can talk about, your services or your products, week to week, month to month. Think about what your sales cycle is and what you would want to talk about. I mean, those are two things: email list and social media that you own, that you don't necessarily spend money on. And then from there, obviously, if you're like, oh, I need more lead gen, you call people like us that map out a plan for you. And
Sure.
we look at all the variables and say, this channel will work best, and this, based on what your needs are. I don't know. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. And I think what I'm hearing is you're saying define your budget and then use that budget to engage someone who can say, with this budget, here's where we need to start and here's what we can do.
I mean,
And
yeah.
Just by saying, I have this much to spend, I want to do it all. And as you've talked about it, I've been thinking about this. There's a progression of things you need to do.
Yeah.
And I'm also aware that it takes a minute. You can't say, we got $5,000 a month, where are my leads? You got to get the CRM. You got to get that set up. You have to get it integrated into the business. Then you have to go through your list. And then you have to start thinking about, how are we going to communicate? What is our message going to be? And so I think going back to the mistakes, it's that ready, fire, aim approach. Well, we'll just do the social media ourselves. And then you go in, and I'm sure you've experienced this. They hire a company like you to come in, and you're like, yeah, we've been looking at your social. Yeah, and they're like, well, no, it's great. What do you mean? We'll do the social, you do this. And you're thinking, well, they're not working together. It's not cohesive. And I can do that, but you're probably not going to get the best ROI out of that, because we're kind of working. We're maybe not working together, but we're certainly working apart.
Yeah. Yeah. And I didn't even mention, and I'm remiss in not mentioning earlier, making sure that your website is up to date. Like,
Sure.
Up to date. Is it mobile friendly? Is it fast enough for the search engines to find you? So because your social and your email is going to drive back to your website usually, because that's where you're getting people to fill out forms and things of that nature. So that's another component that, to your point about, hey, you think you're ready, but you got to make sure that where this is leading and what it's doing is all functioning well.
The one thing I've definitely learned in my marketing journey, and I've said this before, the whole key hire process is based on the old online marketing. I haven't told the story in a long time, but you remember Tony Robbins' Money Masters?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Every month he would send you a CD, and it was all the different guys like Eben Pagan and Frank Kern and all these original who had some questionable tactics. But I remember their line was, if you have something of value, you are obligated to get it in front of people who need it. And,
that's your calling.
Yeah. So every month I would get my CD from Money Masters, and I lived in Calgary at the time, and we had a thing called Fish Creek Park across the street. And I had this super hyperactive dog named Lucy. And I used to have to take her for a walk. Like, we'd go for an hour and a half every night down in Fish Creek Park. But I would put my Money Masters in, and I would listen to that every walk until the next one came. And
oh my gosh.
And that was the foundation. I always say Vistage built Key Hire, but those Money Masters were the concept. Yeah. And so everything we do is based on that kind of outreach and how you market to people. Well, when we reach out to people to try and engage them for opportunities or whatever it might be, we still use those principles. I mean, that's just part of our process that we do.
Totally. I mean, they're core. Yeah. You were innovating on basically your Money Masters, listening to it on your, CD was the beginning of the whole podcast era. It's kind of similar.
You never know. That's funny. That's a long time ago.
It's similar.
A lot of miles. There's a lot of miles on to come out with this idea. You think if you spent that much time, you'd come up with something a little better, but oh well, whatever. Cool.
Well, you understand it. It seems like, for sure.
I do. I think at a high level, admittedly, personally, because I'm a small business guy.
Yeah.
It feels overwhelming at times, and that's why I advocate for go find a pro, right? And which is a great segue into how can we get in touch with you. But if full disclosure, I work with Savage, and you guys do a great job. And I know some of the clients you work with, and I know the quality of the product, and just when you say you're going to do something, it's really done well. But I still need to get to the point where it's between you and Matt, who's behind the scenes, who helps me out here too. It takes a minute, it takes some patience, and it takes people who are really good at what they do to get it done.
Well, that's very kind of you. I can say that our small, we're a boutique group, and we are very passionate about not wasting people's time and money and helping people grow. We were born out of that servant leader mindset of how do we help people grow? And we're all super passionate about that.
Yeah, I think that's why we get along so well. We kind of
yes.
Either if people want to learn more about you and Savage and how to kind of get in touch with you guys, how can we do that?
Hit me on LinkedIn. I hang out there a lot. I think, Matt's going to drop that in there. So hit me there, and I'm always willing to chat.
And you have a new website coming out. You want to talk?
We do. About? Yes. Savage Marketing. So that is coming in March.
Cool. And that's going to be a whole new division of what you guys are doing?
Yes. So Savage Brands has been around 50 years. It's an amazing story. And you can go to savagebrands.com and learn more about our company. We've, our division, Savage Marketing, is kind of peeling off and getting hyper focused on all things marketing and growth marketing for the mid-market, small to medium-sized business. And Savage Brands focuses on branding and culture building.
Very cool. Well, I can't recommend reaching out to Heather highly enough. If you do go to Savage, it's worth it just to go check out the logo. It's the funniest logo out there. Yeah, so cool.
Thank you.
All right, Heather, thanks so much. I really enjoyed chatting with you. I'll see you soon. We'll have lunch soon.
Me too. Yeah, take care.
All right, thank you. The one and only Heather Maines. Check out Savage Brands. They do great work. Honestly, I'm not being paid to say that either. They just do awesome work. I'd like to thank you for tuning into the Key Hire Small Business Podcast. If you got value out of today's episode and you want to keep up to date on our new content, make sure you leave a comment. Let us know what you think of the episode and subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can also leave a comment on future topics, stuff you'd like us to cover. We're here for you. So let us know what you want to learn about, and we'll find the guests to do it for you. If you prefer to listen to your podcast, you can find us on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite platform by searching the Key Hire Small Business Podcast. Thanks for listening. My name is Corey Harlock. Until next time, stop grinding, start growing.